Okay, Jacob. So here's your scene. In a second, I'm going to click over to the scene where I showed you just a quick render. But this is a heavy scene to load. I think there's several things going on. Certainly the grass, I would put that aside. Um, but the one thing I wanted to say is that, when um, when you're trying to diagnose a scene and trying to figure out maybe what's going on, um, what I try to do is break it down into small pieces. So I just opened up your file, right, and looked at it. It was kind of the view. And right off the bat, I'm like, okay, I see that it's taking a long time. I can see it's just really grinding. Of course, I'm on my older iMac machine and I'm doing screen capture. So this is going to be struggling as we do this. But I don't see any light coming from the post. The light post is just moving really slow. It shouldn't be this way. It also appears that um, you've placed a light inside the building and then used that to try to illuminate and then deleted a polygon from the window. So that's okay, but it's a lot of computation. It might give you a slightly more natural look, but if you don't have the rooms in there, you're going to get some weird, visual disconnect, I think, in that. Um, so I'm going to stop this. I'm going to come back to this object here, but I'm going to go to the scene that I created. Let's see if I can switch over real quick. And let's just fire off Redshift. And you can see, obviously, there's not as much stuff in the scene, but there's still cloned lights and a mesh light doing all the lighting here. So I'm going to talk about, how to approach this, but already I'm getting, quicker results. And again, it's a little slow because my screen capture would be better in the lab or certainly on one of the PCs. Or I did this while I was working on a Mac Studio Ultra. So let's try to break this down. Just a couple things that are going on. So let's go back to the big scene. You can see it takes a while to load. It's quite heavy. I'll have to look at some other ways to optimize it. But I always feel like you just have to separate the parts. So like, okay, let's solve this little problem, knowing that there's no other parts in the scene that can cause an issue, right? Okay, so this object here is the cloner. Boy, hopefully this just doesn't crash trying to just load. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is that lamppost right there, I think. No, which one is this? Yeah, it is that one. Okay, so let's take this cloner, copy it, and just open up a new scene. And I'll just go ahead and paste it. It's the little arrow is telling me it's somewhere out in space here. In fact, I'll just do view, frame default. Oops, sorry, frame all. There we go. All right, so I have my lights in here. Just so I can see what's going on, I'm just going to put a ground plane in here and make it ridiculously large. If that's not big enough, 150, 1, 2, 3, 50, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I now have this ginormous ground plane. And just figure out where our little lights are in this little city. And so we can see it's hovering. If I want to, I'll just go into the coordinates and just move this up. Okay. So I do have some cloned objects, right? I have these little lights. This looks like a landscape from Lubbock. So let's go ahead and fire this off. And I can see the little glowing light that's in there, but I don't see anything else happening. All right, so let's see if we can visually inspect this. And of course I know what the answer to this is because I fixed it here. The example I showed you is that you have the sphere set up, and so it does not cast any shadows, and it's glowing, so it's going to look like the light itself. But the light right here, in fact, I'm going to move it backwards. That little point, it's exactly what it is, like a completely singular point in space. That is where the light emanates from. So I need to make sure it's not in any other geometry. Or if it is back up in here in one of these other housings, I need to make sure that this little redshift tag is on it as well so that it doesn't block the light, right? And let's fire off the redshift. So you can see there's the light, right, is now showing up. So we have these little street lights. And you can obviously shape these however you want. I'm going to go into the object and I'm going to make the cone angle really broad, right? Really open it up. Maybe play with that fall off angle. And you've been doing some of that with the fall off curve. And maybe we'll just tone it down. The other thing too, you can set the temperature here. These street lights are always some kind of non-white. Well, I guess there's usually a greenish thing or kind of a warm cast to it, right? But I would pick some kind of temperature. I wouldn't do anything neutral. I think 6500 is kind of your daylight, whatever. So anyways, so now that I know that's fixed, like I have this piece, so I know that I can come back and modify that here in the in that scene. So let's go back. Let's turn this off. Let's go back into your big scene. And yeah, it's just there's so much going on there. And this is a good way of just trying to figure out like what is really slowing down my scene. Because if we start building it back up from some of these pieces, we'll get a good sense of maybe what's going on. And part of it is, I think, you can get to the point you have so many lights in the scene. That might be a problem that we're running into. Okay, so here's some piece of geometry. I'm just clicking on these buildings, and I'm just going to do a copy. So I'm doing on Apple Command C. I'll just go to a new. So I'll just paste this object in there, and you can see there I've got some buildings. Let's maybe just play with this one. Yeah, okay. So let's just play with that one. And maybe, again, just to simplify it so I can see what's going on, I'm going to go into face mode, drag a marquee, and I'm just going to, in fact, let's just do it as points so I can get rid of it. Okay, so I just have this building just sitting there. And again, if I want to, let's go ahead and put a ground plane. 50,000 maybe? Okay. And let's make this sure this is not loading. Oops. Okay, so I've got a building. A couple things about this is, I know I've been putting materials on there. Some of those I think are going to be fine. Just keep in mind that how they get mapped onto these surfaces, whether it's UV mapped or how it's projected on there, is something to keep in mind. Like if these don't have proper UVs, the textures aren't going to work very well. But we'll leave those as is for now. Looks like there's a couple little bits of weirdness as far as the geometry. Looks like a polygon got deleted there or something. And I will also, like in the conversion, I can see that it didn't get some of those polygons. At this point, I would not recommend trying to fill in all those. We're just going to leave it for the time being. But there's just this one object, right, that's just in here. And what I want to do is, instead of deleting the polygons here and letting the light come through these openings, I just want to turn the ones that I select, and here's the trick, is selecting some of these windows and turning them into my lights that I'm going to use. This is, a little problematic, but I shouldn't say problematic, time consuming, but anyways, but it can be very efficient too. So I'm just going to go into face mode. I grabbed this object and I'm going to select the brush selection, and over here in this little the tool properties, like as with this active, I'm just going to make the brush size small so I can just only click on these little windows. And let's just run around and I'll just do this randomly. I want this one and these two. Oh, can you see that? So these look yellow and these look blue. So what this is how the object was created one way or the other. The normals are facing in opposite directions. So it probably won't make a difference rendering in this case. In fact, you can even see, right, where some of those flipped normals are. But I'm going to right click, and this is going to go all the way off the page. You're not going to see it. But all the way down towards the bottom is line normals. And let's see if I can get it to reverse and align. Oh, and there's probably a little align tag. Let's take that off. Yeah, because they're not connected. I don't think that's going to make a problem in this case, but it's just something that happens because of the conversion. Anyways, that's if you're wondering like what that color was, that's what it's coming from. Okay, that'd be mine to pull up time here. So back into faces, and I'm going to select those two, this one, these two, oops. These two here. Maybe someone is home almost on this entire floor. Certainly down here and the bottom, I want these two and that. All right, so I'm just going to call that, those are the ones where people are home or left on their lights, whatever it is that they're doing. And while I'm in polygon mode, I'm going to cut them. So it does create a hole, but then I'm going to come over here and click on nothing, and then I'm going to paste those back in there. And I'm going to name it light panels. Okay, so at this point, I can just use this object. In fact, I'll do another one. So let's go over here, and let's say I had another building that I'm working on. So let's just select a few lights. Hardly anyone lives in this building because it's, I don't know, it's derelict, I don't even know. It's a WeWork space and hardly anyone is in that building. Okay, so again, I'm going to cut those polygons, and I can come over here into this and click on that and paste that in there. Or if you want to separate these out, and the reason you might want to separate it out is, let's say all these light panels, all these here are the ones that I'm going to emit with a certain light. Well, let's see, how do I want to explain this? So if I get to the point that it's just hard to paste them all into this one object, let's say if I came back over to this and I just selected a few of the lights over here, right? And if I click over here on, oops, sorry. I need to cut those, click over here on nothing, and then I'll paste that. So this will be another light panels 2. So if I want to do an area light and turn it into a mesh light, well, I have two objects here, right? That are sets of lights that I'm using because I've been copy and pasting from multiple buildings. I just need to use a connect. And I'll put as many of these in there as I want. But this time, when I create an area light, and I turn that area light into a mesh light, I just want to put the connect in here, and we'll make them visible. Right, so you can see I'm getting tons of illumination from these panels into that scene. And it looks, you know, pretty close to what we need from, especially if you're going to do like this whole, you know, city you're trying to deal with. And again, my poor machine is trying to do screen capture and this at the same time. It's not very well suited for that. And again, I do have this set up so, you know, I could change this to temperature. Again, maybe this is kind of a warm temperature, right, that's coming out of there. If you wanted to, you could always select some other little panels and maybe put a different color. You know, you can make that mesh light, a different temperature if you wanted to mess with that. But you can see this is doing a pretty good job. And you don't have to place lights everywhere. So this is going to be more efficient even though it probably will require more samples to get rid of the noise, this is going to be more efficient than putting an area light in every one of these spots, not to mention they won't be visible in that other scenario. Okay, so we've solved this problem. Let's make sure that's turned off. We have this one here, and then also this is a strategy, I think, for lighting up the buildings. You know, there's pluses and minuses you're going to have to trade off. The one thing I know for sure that you don't want to do is put a light inside the building and have it try to illuminate by coming out the window. That just means that the ray, you know, it's shooting all these rays on the inside that are kind of getting wasted just to get outside the building and illuminate here. In this case, at least you have a big panel that's illuminating directly down onto the ground. And I think that's going to be a lot more efficient, right? So again, I'll go back to the scene that I had before. And, you know, this is just, I mean, it's rendering pretty quick, right? And you can see it's providing a lot of illumination to the other buildings here. It looks dark itself just because not that many lights are pointed towards it in the scene. I did put a dome light, right? So there's a dome light in here. And then the other thing is, I created an infinite light. So an infinite light is just, and you've probably used these in your architectural programs. It's just like the sun or the moon, right? Whatever. And I used it as the moon to just get a little bit of directional light coming this way. I made it really low intensity, I mean, very low. And I also went to its details and made the softness 5. So I get a very soft shadow, like it's coming from the moon, you know, coming through a hazy sky or something. So it's just something that will add a little bit of light to the scene. But the biggest thing is this one area light doing all of these, right? So maybe what you could do is set this up so that, you know, on key buildings, depending on where your camera is, you could select some of these and make them, you know, really bright intensity. And then maybe for some of them, you turn them down, right? So you get low intensity out of them so that you get a blend, right? They're all not 100% on. You get a little mix of that. But the nice thing is you could have the high intensity, the mid intensity, and the low intensity area light, and they would just each reference whatever polygons you put into that connected bucket, right? And so you could get a blend of those things together. All right, almost 18 minutes, crazy. I'm really excited about the project. I think this will work really well. But I would just make it about the light and the building. I would worry less about the textures at this point. In fact, some of them are causing you problems, just like the road texture was like so dark that even though the light was hitting it, it's almost not illuminating it because it was just reflective. So keeping it kind of simple, I think, would be good as far as your materials until you figure out all the lighting and the layout in your scene. Okay, now it's 18 and a half minutes. I should stop.